Okay, class, I'm going to talk to you guys about the drawing part of the project. You should have picked a place, and this is an example from a past student who answered some of the questions on that sheet I gave you about what's the history or the story of the place. From a project when we all worked together in person at a site close by the art area. You can see that they didn't really answer the questions very well. What's the history or story of the place? They just said it's an indent in the building, so that wasn't really very much information. Should have gone into maybe what the area was, music, art, what's in the area, trees, bushes, sprinklers, wood. It doesn't make you feel about anything is what they said. So this is not a good example of what to do. You need to pick a place where you can actually answer things, and whether it stretches you a bit to do it or not, you should still do it. And then they did a mind map with almost nothing in it except for a box. So you can imagine that this is not a great example, but it's good to show you examples that aren't great because it helps you kind of push past it. This is an example of them using the isometric graph paper to draw something in 3/4 view. 3/4 view being you can see the middle corner and then two sides. This kind of paper is useful because it helps you kind of draw things without distortion. They use this, I think, in this kind of view in video games like Minecraft. I think they do it in, and different ones, certain types of graphic novels. This is what you have to do. A back, side, front. Again, this is really simplistic and not a good example because they did something really, really boring and base. I will show you, though, that it was okay for them to use a person. That wasn't very complicated because you don't have to be able to draw like Da Vinci to do this. And then they did a 3/4 view. So when you're doing this, you do not want your project to look like this, but they did go through the process. Here's an example of mine from some drawings that I did. And you can see that I used a generic sort of person for the scale. That would be someone who's like, 5'11", 6 foot. And I have the feet marked. This is labeled down here. It says front drawing model, life is final. I have a 1/2 inch in the drawing equals 7/8 inch in the model equals 1.5 feet in life. I wrote down the scale. So every 1/2 inch of this drawing, that's how I know this is 15 feet and 7.5 feet. Okay. I went through the process. That's a front view. This is a side view. Same type of thing. I used the same character to do the height on all of them in the same kind of space. You can see that it was basically 7.5 by 7.5 by 15 each direction. So it was kind of like made out of a cube, this model. I'm going to show it to you in a second. It's made out of plaster, not out of planar material, but the drawings are still applicable to what we're doing. That's the back view. And then there's a 3/4 view here, which you guys aren't required to do. If you notice I'm using ink, it can be really useful to use ink to do your drawings in pencil and then ink them to pick the lines you really want. I also recommend using some tracing paper possibly in your process because it'll allow you to change things a little bit at a time as you go. If you see here my rough drafts, these are like roughs that are almost done. They're not totally finished, but they're close. And you can see how I had it in pencil rough draft And then I used tracing to get a final version that was pretty close, but I changed it up a little bit. I cleaned up some lines, moved things around, figured out the scale a bit differently. They're very close to each other, but see how I cleaned it up and used ink? So that just shows you kind of why it could be really good to use some tracing paper and also tracing in general. I used that sort of sketch to figure out, also do some math on there to make it how big I wanted and to think about the scale of it in relationship to the space that it was designed for. So this is just to show you the process here a little bit. If you say front, side, these are the drawings without that are rough draft. These are the type of drawings I want to see you guys post on the in progress discussion so that you have something that's pretty close to what you're wanting, so we can give you feedback. But it's not finished drawings that you're married to and you're like, oh, I'm never leaving from this idea. They're drawings that you can still change, even change your idea if it's not working very well. But, you know, I went through that design process we've talked a lot about to get to this point. And this is sort of a figure who's kind of in the fetal position almost, or hugging themselves, kind of close up. Has a lot of different things. Kind of feels a little bit like a maybe mythological sort of figure. These are the rough drafts. So if you have drawing paper or even regular white paper and you're working on that in your sketchbook or just printer paper or something, you get something kind of close to what you want, but you're like not sure about certain placements of things, then you can use that, you know, use the tracing paper to move things around. Like say I didn't want the head to be like that. I was like, it's too big. I could change that, and then I could kind of go, okay, maybe I still want the arm to be like this though. So I can transition it over here. Maybe I don't like how this hand is. I want to give a bit of a thumb, so I'm going to do that here. And I think this is the point. You all have probably seen tracing paper, but I just want to use this chance to say, hey, like, this is going to be useful for you to think about using. And so then I could kind of just keep working it through and changing it by using the tracing paper. I'm referencing what I already did and kind of moving it and changing it around. Like on this one here, for example, you can see close up. I don't actually really love how this form ended up taking effect, but it ended up like that in the model too, so you know it's okay. But I think I could have made that a little bigger, made the knee transition in a more natural way, the way the figure moved in space, being a little more accurate in actuality in the sculpture, as the model sculpture as well as the drawing. What do I mean by moved in space? I mean this being realistic space, like a person could move, I guess is what I'm really trying to say. So tracing paper is really great for that type of thing. And you can use it to do more and more rough drafts and keep changing it up, trace over tracing paper. So recommend that to you as a way to work. And I think it can be very useful for some people to work on gridded paper. So the gridded paper, you can buy it, print it out. Even there's like different websites where you can print out grid paper for free. This is that isometric paper. This is from printablepaper.net, www.printablepaper.net. It lets you follow these lines to make cubes in isometric perspective really easily. So you may want to work on this type of paper or regular graph paper even. That can be helpful. But you want to get those 3 different sketches that you're required to do. The ones you're required to do are the front in scale. So this shows you the scale. 1/2 inch on here is 7/8 on the model, and 1.5 inches and 1.5 feet in real life. That's what that says right there. Okay. But I think I made my life difficult by using this type of a scale. I would have probably been better off just doing 1 inch on the drawing equals 1 inch on the sculpture, which equals 1 foot in real life. Keep it like 1, 1, 1, or 1/2 inch equals 1 inch equals 1 foot. Something that's really more basic, because 7/8 is a little bit weird. And it came down to like the way I had to do the way the model was made and things that changed it up a little bit. But I think if you can keep it closer to 1 to 1 to 1, it'll make your life a lot easier. What do I mean by 1/2 inch equals that? I'm going to grab a ruler and show you. So if you can see, this ruler's a little bit off, but every 1/2 inch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 1/2 inches, right? So that 10 1/2 inches is 15 feet, because 1.5 feet for every 1/2 inch on the drawing. So that's what 15 feet right here. It's saying 1.5 feet for every one of those measures. So that's a 15-foot tall in real life sculpture. Okay? So that's what we mean by in scale, that it's using a scale that this thing stands for that thing. If you can imagine, when you learn, a lot of you probably have taken observational drawing before. You remember 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5 inches. You remember that they talk about in observational drawing that one little measurement or unit of measure stands for something bigger in the world. Well, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about something being in proportion, so that whatever you use as a scale, 1/2 inch equals 1/2 foot on, or 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch on your drawing equals 1/2 inch on your model, which equals 1/2 foot or 1 foot in real life. However you decide to do it, that it keeps consistent. Sculpture is a model of, it's a model and sculpture of the drawing. For it's a representation, recreation of the drawing in 3D space, and a model for a finished piece. Okay? And you'll see that, it's not perfectly like the drawing, but it's pretty close. One thing that's different is there's a big hole here that I should put back in the drawing, or should have done. But you'll see, if you look at it in the different ways, it's pretty close. And I want you to get as close as you can. I mean, you're going to have issues. This is made out of plaster with vermiculite in it. So it's sort of like stone carving, simulating stone carving. And you're going to be using planar material like the mat board. So the 3/4 view drawing is probably the worst drawing of them. Needed to clarify it a little better. But it does the idea, and it's pretty clean and nicely done, and everything's lined up well on the drawing. You see how everything is square to the edge of the page? What do I mean by that? It's even to the edge of the page. The lines are all even. This is square to the edge of the page, like this side of it is even, the bottom of it's even. It's well designed. The ground on the whole thing across the guy, and this is on the same ground. There's a scale with the information on it. The entire scale, like a map, is put at the bottom. So you need to have your work cleanly done. This is as much a part of the project as the sculpture. This is obviously different material, but it still shows you the idea clearly. And you could do this for any type of material. This material would I chose and used to be a representation of doing it in stone or cement casting, or even bronze. I could do if I colored it to say it's that size, because it's like those materials. It's plaster and vermiculite. It's like stone or cement or bronze if I colored it the bronze color. Okay, I want to show you though something important right now about the scale. I said 1/2 inch on this is 7/8 inch on the scale model. The model, that's the actual made object. That's the model. You can see there, that's 5 inches. Okay, this is what I mean. 1/2 inch there equals 7/8 of an inch on this thing, which is that mark right there on the tape measure. So because of that, this has to be a size that makes sense, that the size matches. If you're doing 1-to-1, so if it was like 1/2 inch equals an inch, then that would be, this would have to only be 5 inches tall if I was doing it that way, but it's not. It's 8 and a bit inch. It's, well, what is it? 8 1/4. No, 9 inches tall. So that makes sense in the ratio, and then that would be 1.5 feet. Each inch would be 18 inches, right? In the real, on the real object, which is that much. So this 1/2 inch equals 7/8 inch in 18 inches in real space. When I actually made the object, it would be 15 feet tall and 7.5 feet wide. That's the life final. Okay? So you need to know like what size you're going to want the final one to be in the space, and that's why you're using this association sheet and having some planning to think about how big it would be there and all the different bits of who uses it. You don't have to print this out, but you want to answer all those questions and then do a mind map. Do a really good one, and try to get to a mind map that has like specific imagery to it. You're like, okay, people use it, students use it. Okay, I want something that feels loving. Well, what does loving look like? A hug, a handshake, a gift. You can actually visualize a present. What kind of present? Okay, say it, and you had the present right here. One with a red bow. You have all the different things you could add to it. So you need to get really specific to try to get good imagery in the mind map here. This is what I'm talking about. This process. You want to get down to specific imagery that you can use in your drawings and your model making. Okay? You're going to be doing something, like I said, this is a good example, but you're going to be doing something that's planar material. And this is a start of something out of mat board covered in the putty or drywall mud that I say you can use to get a different surface glued together. So your project's going to need to be more like if you're constructing it out of some type of wood like plywood or something. This is a project that's kind of planar but kind of in between being planar because it's gotten really built up with the plaster drywall mud on it. You can, and I didn't make it out of planar material like this. I just made it out of plaster using molds. But it kind of shows you an idea that you could build this up and make it a little funky depending on how much you added. Or you could sand it down really smooth, which I'll show you what that's going to look like in the next demo. But these are kind of like house forms I've been working with for some of my paintings and show and my sculptures and things I've been doing lately, talking about like a very like, not generic, that's the totally wrong word, a symbol or an archetypal version of something, like a barn or a house or a church or a monument of some sort. Taking away the real specific parts of it, but you still have the overall, so it represents a particular place. If you saw my work in the teacher show recently, you'll have seen a piece like that. I have a bunch of paintings, and then I made sculptures out of the paintings, and they're all dealing with this sort of idea of an architectural model space. So that's going to be something I'm going to show you a couple versions of in the next demo video. So I just want you guys to watch this and understand this so you can get started on your drawings, and then you'll start building stuff off of those. But you need to have these drawings done all the way before you start building, because you're going to be referencing them and using them for that process. All right, guys, take care. I'll talk to you soon. If you have questions, please reach out to me. You know all the ways you can contact me: email, Pronto, messaging on Canvas. We can schedule Zoom meetings. So don't labor in vain and get frustrated and just sit there and lament your life and the difficulty, but reach out and I'll help you. Okay? Take care.